Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland's Youth Forum Council, where we're devoted to conversations of consequences that help democracy thrive. I'm Barbara Yang, a senior at Laurel School and a member of the Youth Forum Council. It's February 18th and you're with a virtual youth forum. I'm happy to introduce today's forum in a conversation about internet inequality. In 2016, the United Nations declared internet access a human right. Making the internet a public utility has been discussed for decades, and the call to finally make the move to provide access to all was felt like never before at the onset of COVID-19 shutdowns. Nearly 15% of American homes have no internet access. Advocates of the push for internet as a public utility say that lack of access creates lasting socioeconomic effects, as well as carrying the potential to impede the practice of other rights, such as free speech. Also, without it, thousands of school children have been left behind due to lack of access. Now, a year into the pandemic, this equates to a full grade loss for some of our poorest and most disadvantaged students. Public school enrollment has significantly decreased nationwide, with a 16% average drop in kindergarten enrollment. While using technology to continue classroom sessions was the obvious alternative to in-person schooling, for many parents and guardians, internet access continues to be a luxury difficult to afford even prior to the massive job losses due to the pandemic. What are local, state, and the federal government doing to ensure citizens have sufficient access to the internet? How does the concept of net neutrality impact the push to address income internet inequality? Joining us today to discuss these issues and many more are Dorothy Bonach, CEO of Digital C, a nonprofit focused on improving Greater Cleveland's digital literacy and providing residents with an affordable, high-speed internet connection, Dr. Henry Pettigrew II, Superintendent and CEO of East Cleveland City Schools, Dr. Gregory Parambescu, Assistant Professor and Director of International Programs, as well as the Associate Director of the Transparency and Governance Center at Rutgers University, and Mallory Wilkes and Treya Gray, Youth Council members at Empowering Youth, Exploring Justice, also known as EYEJ. As in every City Club forum, you can participate with your questions. Text them to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794. You can also tweet them at City Club Youth. We'll try to work them in. Here to guide our discussion is Youth Forum's Community Outreach Coordinator, Kasav Kosana, a senior at Solon High School. And Kasav, I'm turning the forum over to you.
Thank you, Barbara. So as we get started with today's forum, the first point I wanted to discuss is generally, what does the role of internet access play in the education of children, and how did that importance of internet and the role of internet change, especially this past year during the pandemic? Dr. Pettigrew, would you like to start?
Absolutely. And good afternoon, everybody. I'll give you a perspective about internet coming from East Cleveland. You know, before the pandemic, we weren't really using internet. In East Cleveland, we were the least connected city before the pandemic. And when it hit us, we didn't really have ways to connect to our students with internet. And so we'll be happy to talk about some ways we started to make progress this year to get our students connected and to get them to the internet. But prior to that, because we were an impoverished district, it was basically pencil and paper. So the pandemic was horribly bad in terms of setbacks for our children. And we really needed to come up with a way to deal with this issue we're talking about, this digital divide. So internet is incredibly important. And we didn't know so until the pandemic hit how important it is and how far our children were away from the average child in this country.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to jump in?
I can also jump in, and I definitely fully agree with everything Dr. Pettigrew has mentioned. But I think in addition to health, what we're seeing is that the internet is really and access to the internet is turning into a public health issue, right? Just today in the New York Times, I think it was today, some statistics dropped. The life expectancy of African Americans in the United States dropped by 2.7 years after decades of progress, right? And if you look at sort of the less affluent communities that tend to be, have higher populations of African Americans and lack of internet access, right? So the groups who've seen the greatest health disparities from this also happen to be concentrated in areas where where there's no internet access. So it's not just whether we need to have access to the internet to have a job or educate ourselves, but it's literally a question of life and death right now.
Yeah, and I'll just comment further on that. So East Cleveland has the unfortunate distinction of being the least connected city in Ohio, maybe in the country, with more than 60% of the residents have no access to internet. Cleveland is the least connected major city in the country. So this is in cities with households more than 100,000. And we've bounced around in the top 5 least connected for the last 7 years, and nobody noticed until a pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And it's not mistakable. I mean, it's not a mistake that we're also the poorest city in the country. And those two are inextricably and sadly linked. And we have got to figure out a way to fix this, because if you want to achieve racial equity and inclusion, you cannot do that by not putting electricity in the neighborhoods of the 21st century. And that's exactly what's happened here.
To add on to that, let me introduce myself. My name is Treya Gray. I'm a part of the EYEJ Youth Council. I am the social media lead. So we have redlining going on. And if you look at the redlining map that one of our researchers, Casey Morris, created or researched for us, it's almost identical to the digital divide map. So it's obvious that internet providers are purposely not providing internet for Black and brown people and poor people in general.
Awesome. So given that importance of internet, how do we think, how did this so-called digital divide develop in certain areas around the country, and specifically in Cleveland? Obviously, factors such as racism and classism have become an effect, but were they also a large cause of the development of the digital divide in the first place? And was this kind of a recent issue, or is it rooted in, original racist issues from decades ago?
Can I start this? I just like to say that AT&T, about 10 years ago, it was proven that they weren't providing to Black and brown communities. And it was based on the FCC Forum 477 census block data from June 2016. It provides clear evidence that AT&T has withheld fiber and chance broadband improvements from most Cleveland neighborhoods with high poverty rates, including Glenville, Central Fairfax, South Collinwood, St. Clair Superior, Detroit Shoreway, Stockyards, and others.
Yeah, and you can look on our new EYEJ website. We have a digital divide timeline of a break of everything that's been going on, and you'll find that the digital divide has actually been looked into by Cleveland since the year 2000. So 20 years ago, and millions of dollars have been spent to try to combat this, and we're still dealing with it now.
Well, I can jump in here as well. I think when we're talking about the digital divide, another critical issue is defining it, right? So when we're talking about the digital divide, it's really not, and I think that's what the COVID pandemic has really taught us, is it's not just about having access to the internet or broadband. I mean, that's an extremely important factor. But then the next question is well, if you give people access to the internet, does that mean that we're resolving all of these equity issues that are caused by a lack of access? And of course, the answer is no, right? There's a wealth of research. There's a number of studies that show that technology itself, right, is designed with bias in it, right? So when we're talking about digital divide, there are layers of it, right? It comes from the design of technology, from the provision of technology, training programs in terms of connecting people to resources that government makes accessible to them, right? There's a whole line of research on administrative burdens and talking about how various tools, which can include technology, are designed in a way to make things intentionally complicated so that people have a tough time accessing public services, right? I think when we're talking about the digital divide, it's helpful to see sort of the forest and not the tree being internet access, and the forest being this whole ocean. Now I'm getting into a lot of nature metaphors, but this whole ocean of inequality that we really have to focus on addressing if we want to make meaningful progress in terms of connecting everyone to opportunity through technology.
Yeah, that's a great point, Greg. And I think that you have to look at this from the perspective of both access and adoption, and then also look at the impact on the social determinants of health, which all blend together. So you do have to figure out the layers. But first, you've got to have access. It's true that the carriers did not build infrastructure into the city of Cleveland or East Cleveland, and that was redlining that really extended from the mortgage redlining because people that were in the city could not afford to pay the price that would provide the return on investment to build that infrastructure. And that's why an organization like Digital C exists as a nonprofit to really begin to build that infrastructure. And this is not something that one nonprofit can do, but this is something that's an all hands on deck in every community, in every city, and urban and rural areas across the country. I mean, the time has come for digital equity and inclusion to be part of the overall equity and inclusion movement and social justice movement. And it took a pandemic to wake people up to these facts and how bad this was. Now everybody wants to help and get involved, but the question is, how do you do that? I was on a call just before this that the state of Ohio in its new budget is finally allocating significant dollars to address the digital divide in Ohio. Other states will do that, and I think the federal government is ready to do that. So the good news is people are aware and they're trying to address it, but it's going to take a long time to make up for the damage done by this lack of access.
I would just like to jump in and say that this is very urgent because this is affecting youth in a very, very dramatic way. First of all, I know kids from the areas such as St. Clair that have no internet access, and due to them not having internet access, they are forced to find other ways to have fun. So there's a rise in violence, first of all, because kids are bored, and already East Cleveland and St. Clair is targeted because it's a primarily Black area, so police officers are over watching that area. So there's more and more Black and brown kids going into jail and not even getting a chance because the city has failed at providing us internet and education and ways to escape the mental drain of the pandemic and the digital divide.
Yeah, and to also go with Greg's point, after we close the digital divide, hopefully, UIJ has been working with senators to create a digital literacy bill and teach everyone about computer education, so there isn't that kind of technology bias.
Yeah, if I can jump in there just to add, boots on the ground in East Cleveland when the pandemic hit, we absolutely saw that we as the district, we began providing internet for our parents and our students. So one way, as you said, there aren't a lot of ways to get internet in East Cleveland in some of our areas. So we did have Windspeed Broadband, who was already in East Cleveland. They used to be called East Cleveland Cable. They became a quick partner. We're trying to get, broadband into homes. We also did some T-Mobile hotspots, but those have their own set of issues and quirks with them being portable and being able to be moved. So this idea of trying to have consistent internet for all the students is more and more increasingly important because as I heard on this panel say that, the students get into other things when they're not able to access education and access the other worlds that we have outside of our bedrooms through the internet. So really, this is a deep and important issue that we're having. So I also just wanted to chime that in.
Awesome. Thank you. And as we move into the pandemic and now the later stages of the pandemic, especially in Cleveland and even around the country, how have we seen this issue kind of being solved by school districts and even state governments? And have these solutions that have been implemented been successful, or do we still need more work here?
We definitely need more work because, first of all, I know a lot of people that have hotspots and their whole entire family is running off of one hotspot, and that's most definitely not a solution. My friend, her name is Sarah. Her family all works on one hotspot, and so first of all, the hotspots die very easily. So it's definitely not a solution, and I mean it's temporary, very, very temporary. So it's dramatically affecting her mental health as well as her family's, because her mom works from home, she works from home, everybody is at home, and with them not having internet, like real internet, her grades are low, her mental health is low. It's just overall messing up a lot of families in the community all in one.
Yeah, so a year ago, we saw that 2/3 of CMSD youth did not have access to these hotspots or tablets, and that was right as soon as the pandemic hit. And they spent $14 million and promised that every student would get a laptop and a hotspot to go to school. And just this week, we're still seeing that CMSD students do not have access to these resources, and we're still seeing that 30% of family members in Cleveland do not have any internet or high-speed internet.
Yeah. So this is not a quick fix. It didn't take us a couple of years to get here, as someone mentioned. It took us 20 or 30 years to get here. And so it's not going to get fixed overnight. We have a terrific partnership with CMSD. As they gave out the hotspots, we committed to build infrastructure and take internet to the homes of their students. We've only been able to get to 450 homes, but that impacts 850 students approximately. And then also in some of the other public school districts. But students are impacted dramatically. And as you mentioned, parents are working from home. So we kind of divide the issue up into three buckets, if you will. You've got the students, and we know that that's a terrible problem at this point, particularly since they're not back in school. You've got seniors who are isolated in high-rise apartments or low-income housing. They don't have access to internet. Their isolation and mental health is becoming an issue, and they can't participate in telehealth appointments like anyone on this call is able to do, because we have access to Zoom and other amenities because we can get access to the internet. And then, as someone mentioned earlier, there's this population in the middle that we call the strivers, and that's pretty much the caregivers for the students or the seniors or both, because in Cleveland we have many multi-generational families, and it impacts the entire family and the entire fabric of the community when you don't have access to internet. And many of the strivers, as we call them, are under or unemployed now because of the pandemic. And without access over the last 20 years, they don't even know how to use the internet once they get it. So this is, again, multi-pronged. Once you connect people, it's only the beginning of solving the issue. And the governments have not done enough fast enough to help this. And not only do we have redlining, but if you think about choice, people don't have choice in these communities either. And in particular, not affordable choice, because $50 to $100 a month to get the kind of access that everyone deserves in their home is not affordable to people in communities that are primarily of color. And it's just not right. So again, we have a long way to go to fix this. I say that, but I'm always the optimist. At least we've recognized the problem. Governments are coming to the table, and I think we finally have the will to make the adjustment to the solution.
So my question is, how long do we as different organizations have to keep putting in the work when the government, who is our authority, should be doing that? Why do the citizens in the community have to do that? And how long is it going to take? Because we don't have tomorrow. We don't have now.
Well, I can't speak for governments. And, that's why we elect officials to represent us in government. And I think it's really important that as we come of age to vote, we vote for officials that understand the issues and are committed to the issues that provide social justice, equity, and inclusion. There's no other, that's and I'm not a political person, but on either side of the aisle, you can find people that become committed to this. So find your candidates and make sure they get into government. And there are plenty there now that recognize this. Again, can they make this right overnight? It's not, it takes a minute to build infrastructure in the communities, to take internet to the home. And it takes dollars and focus dollars. And the other thing that happens when governments put money on the table, a lot of people line up for them. So just, the realities of life are the realities of life in government. And but the good news is your voices are there and you're expressing them, and hopefully they're being heard.
Yeah, I'll jump in as well. I mean, if you look at some of the CARES Act spending, right? So there was a lot of money earmarked to mitigating the digital divide, right? For overcoming, but the money, it's basically distributed to states, and then the states open up the money to actors who qualify for it. But my sort of issue with this is there's a lot of value in that, but what's missing is an overall plan, right? Like what do we want to get? And I think that's what you're getting to, Treya, as well. Is so what are we going to do? Like what's the game plan here? We're giving everybody money. Oklahoma is doing something. Ohio's doing something different. New Jersey's doing something completely different. But where's the overarching vision in terms of transformation, right? Digital transformation and digital inclusion. And I think that's we don't have guidelines, and it's up to the organizations like Dorothy is running and Dr. Pettigrew's efforts. It's too much on their backs. I mean, I think we need a digital vision to guide us towards this digital inclusion.
I'd like to speak on what Dorothy said about electing officials. So with the digital divide going on, we're obviously being less educated. So with knowing that, even when we were in school, the education system is wrapped around white supremacy. So we are upholding white supremacy within the eyes of all of the children. So all of the government, the education that we're receiving is moved towards more of a Republican matter. So this is the reason for redlining and everything. So our education system needs to be reworked anyways, so that this isn't a thing.
Well, first of all, white supremacy isn't Republican or Democrat. It's about white people and the traditions that we have held on to, or maybe the history we've ignored. And again, before we can correct that, we have to own it. And then we have to elect officials, Republican or Democrat, that are willing to own it and fix it. Again, this is a multi-layered issue. So we can't solve it overnight, but the issues are on the table. And again, it's something the pandemic has helped to expose. It's terrible that it took a pandemic to bring this out. And people of color and are suffering more than others. So it's, what are we going to do about it? But the fixes aren't quick. I mean, we didn't get here. This is 200 or 300 years in the making, not 20 or 30. So, one step at a time. We've got to undo this.
And I think just to add to that, really, I see in our district 3 prongs to the problem. There's that access problem, the cable coming to the home, or the box on the table that has the internet that too many people connect to. But then there's also the devices. And we found that there's shortages of devices globally. You can't get Chromebooks, you can't get certain devices, but then now you're putting them in hands of people who have not used those before. So there's device management, maintenance, and repairs. And so there's layers of all of these things trying to make sure that the kids or the students can stay connected. But then even if you have the access and you have the device, then it is that digital literacy that Mallory was talking about, that parents and grandparents, in a large part, who may have never had the internet in the home or may have not have used it in their residence, now are having to help students with homework and trying to navigate Zoom and other things like we are. And that really is now becoming the big thing. And then the other piece, when we start going out trying to get internet services, number one, on the company side, there were, when trying to connect residents to those companies, there were outstanding balances, or there were other hurdles that you got to jump through, or it'll be free just for a couple of months and then they'll back bill you. There was a lot of distrust between the community and the companies. So that's also something we have to work out. But then when, as a district, we were actually working with Windspeed to hardwire or to install routers into homes, there's also that distrust of, what is this? Why is it coming in my home? So just an overall of the community not understanding this new era that we're in, because it's something we've never seen before. So we want to run fast, and we're really trying to run fast, but our community also, and I'm thinking of the older community that I'm serving, particularly our seniors, they needed to go a little slower. While we're trying to go fast, they want us to go slow. So trying to coordinate all of that is really tough. So I applaud all the folks, on the call, and those who are trying to move forward in this area. It is very difficult.
Yeah, and that's the thing about EYEJ. Like, EYEJ as a whole empowers change makers in our youth, and not just through their voice, but like through actual change. So we're trying to educate the community with our town hall events and our phone zap events. We're trying to work with senators, but I still feel like we're not getting through as much as we should. Like, we need an answer now. Like, we're saying it's going to take a long time to get the digital divide closed. Is it going to take 20 years or can it be fixed in about a couple months? Like, we don't have a time frame on it, and we need one.
Well, just to chime in, I think to my mind, right, this isn't a race with a finish line, right? So racism has existed in the United States for a very long time, right? And I'm sure it goes back, even to the times before European settlers were here. It's something that's been around, and I think it's going to stay, right? It's a continuous process of purging, our structures and our systems and technology from this approach to thinking, right?
What do you mean by it's going to stay?
Sorry?
What do you mean by it's going to stay?
I think that we're going to see inequality existing for a very long time, and there's going to be very race-based differences. We see them continuing throughout society, right? So what happens once we have internet access? I think we'll still see disparities in terms of digital literacy, and once we reduce the digital literacy, I don't think it's helpful to see this as being a race with a finish line. I think this is something that we need to continually work towards striving for, right? Racial parity. Otherwise, it's I wouldn't feel comfortable saying, okay, well, we've got basically African Americans and white Americans now have access to the internet. Everybody has access, so we're done here, right? I think that's a very dangerous mentality to have. I think we can continually work towards improving inclusion and move away from set metrics, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Is there anything else anyone would like to jump in with before our mid-forum in a minute here?
No, I would just, echo what Greg and Dr. Pettigrew said, that, this is a complex issue. There's multiple layers. I think we could fix internet connectivity if we had the will and the support of government and the carriers to fix it, because some of the issues Dr. Pettigrew pointed out, where if you've got, if you've been a subscriber, you lost your job, you couldn't afford it. Now you can't come back in it to any of those low programs. And at the very beginning, you're going to need some help to get a head start. And everyone should have broadband access to their home, not a mobile hotspot, not something on a bus. And then the other issue nationally and even in Ohio, everyone thought it was a rural problem. Nobody even admitted that it was an urban problem to begin with. So it's a constant education, it's constant work that's going to happen. We can solve the internet problem far more quickly than we can the racial issues and racial injustice. But we've got to be diligent and focused and working on all of them all the time.
Thank you.
And with that kind of commitment, I think we as Cleveland, East Cleveland, Ohio, the country, we know that we're innovative and we have tenacity. And if we put our minds to it collectively, it can be solved.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So at this point, I'll toss the forum over to Rimi or Asanya for our mid-forum segue.
Good afternoon. I'm Rimi Orasanya, a member of the Youth Forum Council. Today, we are enjoying an enlightening and timely Youth Forum panel discussion on the lasting effects of internet inequality, the ongoing socioeconomic impact caused by the lack of internet access, and the work in advocacy to make it more accessible for all. The panelists featured today are Dorothy Bonnock, CEO of Digital C, a nonprofit focused on improving Greater Cleveland's digital literacy and providing residents with affordable, high-speed internet connection. Next, Dr. Henry Pettigrew II, Superintendent and CEO of East Cleveland City Schools. Next, Dr. Gregory Porambescu, Assistant Professor and Director of International Programs, as well as the Associate Director of the Transparency and Governance Center at Rutgers University. And finally, Mallory Wilkes and Treya Gray, Youth Council members with EYEJ. That's the Empowering Youth and Exploring Justice. Our esteemed moderator today is Youth Forum Council's Community Outreach Coordinator and Solon Senior, Kassav Kasona. Now, if you have questions for any of our panelists, please text them to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794. You can also tweet your question at City Club Youth, and we'll do our best to work it in. May we have the first question, please?
Thank you. So the first question here is, are we trying to, in terms of this whole process, reach the homeless children to get computers or training? Because studies did not show that these people who needed help are getting the information that they need.
I'll start that one off. We are getting internet access and devices to those students that are categorized as homeless or doubled up, and those that are in those situations. But we're not, obviously we can't do the hardwire to the home. That's where the mobile hotspots probably have the best application with students that are transient or students that may have to move from place to place. But we definitely are looking at that and trying to address those needs. But there's a lot of other issues in that besides just the computer and the access and making sure those students are successful.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. So our Cleveland student population was transient to begin with, and they're even more transient now. Dr. Pettigrew, probably same thing in East Cleveland. It's very hard to find where the students are at this point to even get to them. And sadly, some of the addresses we have are vacant lots or vacant homes. And, it's a tough issue. And we have to, again, everyone needs to be served with internet. I'm also a strong advocate for the homeless and getting everyone home, but that's another day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's fair, because I think that if, as our authority, once again, you guys should be responsible in finding these kids and finding out where they are and how they're going to get internet. And with the broadband, you can be in an area and you can receive 3-4 different types of internet, or you can be in an area where you receive 0 or none. So it's not fair for these homeless kids to have these hotspots and not have knowledge that they're actually going to have actually be able to get internet. Just like one of our youth council members, Miranda, she was not able to get internet for almost a month because of the area that she was in. So that's not fair. The authority needs to step up.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's been unfair for a while, because it's, initially the idea was, well, we have libraries, and libraries will serve as an outlet to connect disadvantaged children or children without a fixed home to the internet. But that's not, now we're seeing how some of these initial ideas we had are so bad, right? And this is what the COVID pandemic is really doing, is it's giving us a sort of a clear illustration of how a lot of these poorly thought out policies to connect people are just woefully they're underwhelming, right? They're not doing their job. I also think that another challenge is for school districts like Dr. Pettigrew's, which is transforming at the moment. From what everything I've read online, I'm not in Cleveland. This school district, it has a lot on its plate, right? So in addition to the existing issues that need to be addressed, there's this whole other issue of now having to, on the drop of a dime, connect everybody with the internet. So it's it's just really a huge issue. And I think, to circle back to some of the earlier discussion, really the only solution here is political will, right? That's the cause and that's the solution.
We cannot get good politicians if we do not change the education system to not uphold white supremacy.
Thank you.
Can't.
Yep. So our next question here is, why would inventors, entrepreneurs, and investors have an incentive to put time, energy, and their capital into these new disruptive technologies, or just improved services and products to a business that's almost publicly owned and publicly controlled?
Yeah, just to chime in again. I mean, I think diversity is critical to disruption, right? So I think that there is an incentive for businesses to come up with the next big thing, next new big thing. I think what we're going to find from a couple of years down the line is that those who have access to the internet are going to be much more diverse, right? And the demand for different types of products is going to change as well as a result of the efforts, Dr. Pettigrew, Digital C, and other organizations that are now working rapidly to connect folks to the internet, right? So once they get to the internet, the question is, well, what are they going to do there? And I think that there's a whole new incentive for markets to start thinking about ways of becoming more inclusive and meeting potential demands.
I'd like to add on. So companies are now they're hiring people, and it's going to be obvious that they're hiring people who have access to the internet, because the digital divide increases the cost of job search, which simultaneously lowers both the chance of finding a job and the ability to make a decent income. So if you're paying for internet and your phone bill, which is $200 a month, but you only make $500 a month, that's half of your paycheck gone. So this implicates the economy, as people are more frantic to find a stable job and don't have access to apply to one. So poor people are most likely not going to be able to get a job.
But that is the incentive for employers and large companies to really help to create internet access, because they want access to employees. And I do believe there's a trend in American business to try to figure out how to diversify their workforce, be inclusive, and make the jobs available to everyone in the community. And so that, again, I think is on the rise. And I think that public-private partnerships are the way to address this. I consider myself an entrepreneur and an innovator, and I've flunked retirement to take this job because I have such a passion about it. And we're using technology that's tried and true from around the world and bringing it to Cleveland to try to solve this problem. But we are disrupting the market for traditional carriers. And we have to be able to we have to be able to have opportunity to give people choice and be disruptors. That's what it's going to take to do this. So my internet and phone bills add up to more than my first house payment. That is ridiculous. And I understand exactly what you're saying, Trey, because people can't afford the carrier prices. So again, we've got to be innovative, we've got to form partnerships, and we have to figure out how to address this just one step at a time.
Yeah, and I'd like to say it's not even like just not being able to afford one carrier over another. A lot of people don't even have the opportunity to pick which carrier that they have because they'll only be for a certain area.
Right. And really, that's what we're talking about: building infrastructure, almost a public utility conversation. Just as the electricity, water, gas, those things had to be regulated and moderated by the government. I think more and more as we are looking at this digital divide, to make it affordable to everyone, and so you can get it into the homes, there has to be some form of regulation. And to that conversation about, are entrepreneurs or investors willing to put in the time to be disruptive with the new technologies? We're seeing that, whether it's the ESSER money, the CARES money, round one or round two, that is flooding my inbox with so many companies saying that they have the solution for the digital divide. Whether it's right or not, it is prompting companies to think differently. Though I don't think that's the solution either. I think ultimately it's going to have to be where cities, governments, build out infrastructure, set up access points on buildings so that everyone in the community can have access to free internet. They do that in other countries, in other communities, in other states, where an entire community can be free internet. So that may be some of the things long term needs to happen so that this can be a reliable solution for all.
Yeah, and I agree. Reliable and affordable internet is essential, but free is not sustainable.
Right.
And so I think there's a balance on all things, and we can make it affordable, and no one should have to go without if they truly cannot pay. That should be the ground rule, and everyone should get access to true broadband to their home. So again, working together with the public sector, the private sector, large, small companies, all hands on deck, institutions, we just have to put our minds together and come up with plans. Back to Greg's point, if no one else is going to put up the plan, then that's what we have to do. And the tent for this we has to be pretty big. So.
Then why are we still talking about it? Why haven't you done
anything? I work every day to do this, so we're doing it as fast as we can.
Can I have some examples, please?
Well, we have connected we're almost at 1,000 households in the city of Cleveland. We've built gigabit infrastructure into the poorest neighborhoods of Cleveland, Huff, Fairfax, Glenville, Central. I don't think any other carrier can claim that. We're very close to East Cleveland with our infrastructure. We have a meeting coming up with East Cleveland. We're over in the metro neighborhood where there's lack of internet connectivity. So we've done that we worked right through the pandemic every day. I'm at my office. I've got installers that just had to come in because the snow was too hard to climb up on an icy ladder to get to the rooftops to install it. So every day through the pandemic, we went from 80 households to 800. And we have our sales and technical teams are comprised of students from Cleveland schools that are working with us because they came from the neighborhoods and they understand the neighborhoods and they understand what it's like to be without connectivity for them, their parents, and their grandparents. And so I work at this every day.
Okay.
Again, I flunked retirement to do it. It's not a job. I don't need a career move. This is a passion. And more passionate people are what we need.
Thank you.
Just
Sorry,
to
go
add on, East Cleveland is still 50 to 75% have no internet access, and you're saying that these are the areas that you're covering, so I'm not understanding what is really being implemented, and considering that I know many people that
So we actually have a plan and a budget for East Cleveland to connect them to the internet, and we're meeting with them within the next few weeks with the county and the city and others. So again, one step at a time. But again, it's a choice in terms of who is willing to put that internet infrastructure together. I think you've said WOW is there at the moment, and we're not. If someone else is there to solve it, we're not needed. So we don't believe that we've got the one solution for everyone. We have a solution. We've proven we can implement it. We have partners. We have global partners. It's just a matter of being able to get the work done. And it's been, and working through a pandemic makes life a little more difficult.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that certainly is very inspiring. So the next audience question here is, how can individuals work to help stop the digital divide? What is the best actions we can take?
as EYJ is working, we're not doing one step at a time. We're doing multiple things at the same time. I was able to go down to Columbus to testify against the HB 13 bill. Also, we have programs. We go on Instagram Live to raise awareness for this. You can follow our youth Instagram. It's EYJ Youth Council. And also, we're bringing attention to things, and we're also putting in action in order to get things done. Just like going down to Columbus or having YODJ talk and discussing solutions, and then actually putting in the work to do it. So it's not one step at a time. It's all steps we're putting all steps in action in order for things to get done faster.
Yeah, and like we start off with awareness, but that's the important thing, like educating each individual, and then you can join our events, like if we have another town hall or another phone zap event, any other community events, just pay attention to like EYJ has going on.
And Mallory and Trey, your work is really important because it is about educating. So this question is about other individuals becoming involved, and there's a lot of education that has to take place so people understand what the digital divide is, what the issues are. Again, it's not easy. It's a bit complex. My technology background is in biology, not in telco, but over these past 3 years, I've learned a lot, and I think that the community is genuinely interested in learning more and helping. And I do believe that all people are willing to help. If you take a look at this, you can't help but want to help, right? So keep up your good work educating people, and I think that's how you do it. So your organization, our organization, there's a digital equity coalition in Cleveland that's sponsored by the Cleveland Foundation, the county, the city, the school. CMSD is our biggest partner at the moment. And so everybody is trying to learn more to figure out what's the best solution.
We are not just educating, we're implementing as well. We're doing research.
Which is important.
We're creating a bill. We're not just educating, we're doing more.
Yeah, and I don't think of it as just helping either. Like, we have to live through all of this stuff every day. One of the reasons that the Youth Council chose the digital divide is because at one point we have all experienced it. And the fact that like we as a youth have to speak up for all the other youth in Cleveland, like is very important to me. And it's not just about health thing. It's like what I have to go through.
Right.
Dr.
It's
Pettigrew.
toxic stress. We with us being on the internet, we have a lot of toxic stress, considering that people are already being left behind. So for example, I know a girl that never had a phone. She was already left behind. She only had the vision of what was in front of her because she did not have social media based on what was going around the world, what was trending around the world. So us having phones, us not having phones is dramatically impacting our mental health. We're living through it. We don't have tomorrow or the next day because my mental health is going down, and I have been at points where I don't want to continue my life because I can't get homework done. And if I can't get to the place that I want to be, I can't make money, then I don't want to be here. So what are you guys going to do? What is going to happen?
Thank you. So the next audience question we have here is, the arts organization all have educational outreach to Cleveland schools. So how can they help? Dr. Pettigrew, would you like to start us off?
Absolutely. Yes. They actually have a value. They can help as well. I know they're working CMSD. They work with us in East Cleveland. Also, just trying to add to the variety of course offerings that we can offer to children. I know the next question is also asking about how can you use television. So how can we expand in terms of the educational piece? Because students are getting left behind. I hear the passion on this call. This is happening to students in real time. The young people, this isn't something that they're just talking about. They're experiencing it and they're living it. One of the things we did in East Cleveland back in March, we said, you know what, the district will pay for any student that needs internet, whether it's T-Mobile broadband or whether it's Wi-Fi, whatever it is. We know we needed to do that. It's not a sustainable solution, but there was a right now fix, and we're trying to work with all of the partners that were mentioned to build a broader base there. But definitely there is ways that the arts organizations can reach out. I mean, there's so much that we can do. We have to maintain the arts because as we start looking at digital and we're having other courses and classes, sometimes those arts, those courses get left out. So we do need some partners to help us beef up the materials, keeping them engaging, keeping it exciting for students. But I love the idea of being able to offer things on public access TV as well. And I think those go together. We can show and give students more opportunities to learn and expand their worldview using these mediums. So absolutely, all of those solutions are applicable here.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to jump in? Dr. Pornbescu?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I agree with Dr. Pettigrew. He said it very well. I think there's a number of interesting opportunities that are being presented, right, to connect to the arts and to expand our our understanding of the world and of things. But of course, this, as we're seeing from this call, right, it's nice to talk about arts, but there's so many other burning issues that need to be addressed as well. So it's just a tricky situation to prioritize resources.
Thank you. So our next audience question here is, were there any low-tech solutions that were being implemented for this crisis, especially during the pandemic? And if so, what were these solutions exactly?
I'll jump on that. Our low-tech solution was bringing students back to school January 19th. While we're talking about the digital divide, in East Cleveland, we've opened our doors and over 60% of our students have opted to come back. That's the low-tech solution. Because here's the thing, even though students are connected, even though they're remote, they got a Chromebook, we saw and this is on ODE's website on their data insights report, we saw students just do horribly during this remote. The grades from A's and B's dropped to C's and D's. And if you were just a middle of the road student, now you're looking at failures. So the low tech solution, I believe, outside of you can do a hotspot, but there's issues with that, is getting students back to school. And we've done that. And we're trying to make sure everybody's safe so that these spaces can be places where kids can get interventions, they can get helps, they can get supports. Our students are not doing okay remotely. They are surviving a pandemic. So we quickly need to get them back to being in person. That is the low-tech strategy that we're trying to employ.
I'm not understanding why we would bring students back in the middle of a pandemic when teachers can barely get kids to listen to them and keep their masks up. So it's just going to make the situation completely worse.
And East Cleveland's a little bit different. What we did see, we were having problems with remote where students didn't want to have their camera on. And then when it's in person, they don't want to have their mask on. But really that's just behavioral with students and just teaching them good behaviors. We're walking through those things now as an early district. We've been doing it for about a month. So those are the hurdles, teaching people how to be safe. Making sure you're doing temperature scanning, and we're doing rapid testing, and we're cleaning with 4 or 5 different layers of protection. And our staff just got vaccinated yesterday with the first dose. So all of those things are happening to make sure that this low tech solution, because the online isn't working and the staying away isn't working. So we have to figure a way to do both. And then the other conversation that we're not having is once we get post pandemic, we still should be able to offer the choice to teach remotely, or students can come in person, give families that choice. So we're really trying to create an avenue that if you can survive online, you can stay. But the low tech strategy to help you and make sure that you can be successful is to come back to the buildings with all of the safety measures in place and tracking all of the COVID numbers and making sure everybody knows there's a whole plan on that, making sure our students are safe. But that's what our community has asked for. They wanted the buildings back open so that learning can start back.
So, to shift gears a little bit away from education and towards seniors. So in Newark, there's an effort in collaboration with Rutgers and a couple of other actors in the city to connect low-tech solution to basically to call in and organize exercise classes over the phone, right? Just to connect these seniors who are, who can't leave their house either because it's a pandemic or they're not seeing their families because their families can't swing by anymore. So there have been efforts using phones, but I mean, those are clunky, right? That doesn't work as well as you might hope. And I think what's happening with some of these low-tech solutions is that people are giving up on them and then saying, well, we just need to go towards the high-tech solution. And that's what's going on in Newark. So they're moving away from flip phones to tablets, right? Which creates new problems, of course.
Thank you. So as we move on here, now kind of shifting towards more high-tech solutions, what are the most promising cost-effective technologies that could be implemented to ensure we get Clevelanders and people in general online quickly? We know about millimeter wave technologies such as satellite technologies like Starlink. Could that be one? And if so, are there any others that could be effective?
So I'll comment on that. Satellite technology for the urban area is a little bit difficult because of the density of the urban area and the latency that it's up and down is a little bit difficult. You get a lot of interference. Millimeter wave is what we use. And obviously the best solution would be fiber to the home. But to think about digging up the streets of Cleveland or East Cleveland to put fiber to the home at this point, I think would be too long and way too expensive. Tens to hundreds of times more expensive than millimeter wave. And so the millimeter wave technology, where we actually take the fiber signal from the ground to the tops of tall buildings and create a fiber ring in the sky, is the solution that we think works. We've been doing more than piloting it. We've implemented it. And the issue would be to get enough dollars to complete that infrastructure so we could get to all neighborhoods of Cleveland and everyone in those. There's different technologies also that you can use from that millimeter wave technology to get into households. So if you've got line of sight from the top of a tall building, that's the best. But Cleveland is known as the forest city, so to get under that tree canopy, you have to use different technologies for that. There are some LTE technologies, some of the older 4G technologies that can help to augment and lower the cost and speed up the process. So we're looking at a suite of technologies that could be used, and different neighborhoods and different building materials require the use of different technologies. So again, it's being innovative, being thoughtful, looking at technologies that are tried and true from across the world, and then bringing them to Cleveland or any city to try to figure out how do we get this implemented as fast as possible. I also saw a question about how is Digital C working with the city of Cleveland, and I want to say that I strongly believe in the public-private partnership. My career was in building public-private partnerships, and I think what's different about solving this issue is this is the public-private partnership at the leadership level, where you get all of your institutions and your corporate community and your city, state, and county governments together. But this solution really needs to involve getting to the ground and the community level and finding the trusted people in the community to help you, because not everyone believes that it's not even believed. They don't even know they need to be connected to the internet sometimes, or maybe they've heard bad things about the internet. And, we distribute computers and internet service into these high-rise apartments with seniors. Some seniors just don't want to be bothered with this. But in order for them to stay healthy and to have access, particularly, COVID will not be the first pandemic that we're going to see, unfortunately, over the course of lifetimes. And so we've got to think about this for the long haul and make sure that everyone has access, everyone understands how to use the internet. And so, I think it's just all hands on deck. Public-private partnerships, there are ways to get this done.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for speaking today. At this point, I turn the forum over to Yash Kankaria for our closing speech.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Yash Kankaria, a senior at Solon High School and a member of the Youth Forum Council. Today's forum featured a discussion about internet inequality, the ongoing socioeconomic impact caused by the lack of internet access, and the work in advocacy to make it more accessible for all. Joining us today were Dorothy Bonnock, CEO of Digital C, a nonprofit focused on improving Greater Cleveland's digital literacy and providing residents with an affordable, high-speed internet connection. Dr. Henry Pettigrew II, Superintendent and CEO of East Cleveland City Schools. Dr. Gregory Poromsky, Assistant Professor and Director of International Programs, as well as Associate Director of the Transparency and Governance Center of Rutgers University. And finally, Mallory Wilkes and Tria Gray, Youth Council members at Empowering Youth Exploring Justice, also known as EYEJ. Our moderator is Youth Forum Council Outreach Coordinator Kassav Kasano. Today's Youth Forum is presented in collaboration with Empowering Youth Exploring Justice. We appreciate the partnership and support of today's forum. City Club's Youth Forum is now sponsored by AT&T, with additional support from the Char and Chuck Fowler Family Foundation, the Doris C. Michael Ski Trust, and the William M. Weiss Foundation. We're grateful for their support. All City Club virtual forums are sponsored by the Bank of America, Key Bank, the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, and PNC, and the many more generous members, sponsors, and donors listed on their website at cityclub.org. You can join them in supporting that work when you make a contribution online or become a member at cityclub.org. Join us on May 18th for the next Youth Forum. Thank you for joining us today. Our forum is now adjourned.